The fuel in your car did not come from a refinery. It did not come from a pipeline. It did not even come from the ground. Not directly. It started somewhere most people never think about. Thousands of meters below the surface of the ocean, trapped in rock formations that formed hundreds of millions of years ago, in places so remote and so deep that reaching them requires some of the most complex engineering ever built by human beings. This is the story of crude oil. Not from the gas station backward, from the beginning, from the ocean floor. Most people picture oil extraction as something that happens on land, a pump jack in a desert, a derrick in a field. That image accounts for a significant portion of global production. But it misses the other half entirely. Approximately 30% of the world's oil is extracted from beneath the ocean. Not from shallow coastal waters, but from deep water and ultra-deep water fields, reservoirs located under 500, 1,000, sometimes 3,000 meters of open ocean, beneath another several kilometers of seabed rock. To reach that oil, humans have built structures that operate at the absolute limit of what engineering can achieve. Let me take you through the entire journey, from the reservoir to the tanker. Every stage, every system, every transfer. It starts with geology. Crude oil is not a liquid lake sitting underground waiting to be tapped. It is a mixture of hydrocarbons, molecules formed from ancient organic material compressed and heated over geological time, trapped in porous rock formations called reservoirs. These reservoirs are located by seismic survey ships that send acoustic pulses through the ocean floor and analyze the reflected signals to map subsurface structures. Once a promising formation is identified, an exploratory well is drilled. This process alone in deep water can take months and cost hundreds of millions of dollars before a single barrel of oil is confirmed. If the reservoir is viable, development begins. And this is where the engineering scale becomes difficult to comprehend. A deepwater oil field requires one of two primary extraction systems, a fixed platform or a floating production system. Fixed platforms, the steel or concrete structures you picture when you think of an oil rig, are anchored directly to the seabed. They work well in water depths up to around 500 meters. Beyond that, the structural requirements become prohibitive. A fixed platform in 500 meters of water must support its own weight, resist wave forces, wind loads, and ocean currents, while maintaining precise stability for the drilling and production equipment mounted on top. The largest fixed platforms weigh over 600,000 metric tons. They are among the heaviest structures ever moved by human beings. In deeper water, 500 to 3,000 meters and beyond, fixed structures are replaced by floating systems. The most significant of these is the FPSO, the floating production, storage, and offloading vessel. An FPSO is a ship, a very large ship, typically converted from a supertanker hull, permanently moored above a deepwater oil field, using a system of anchors and chains that can hold the vessel in position against currents and storm conditions for years without moving. The FPSO does not just extract oil, it is a complete offshore processing facility. Oil and gas coming up from the reservoir arrives at the FPSO as a mixture. Crude oil, natural gas, water, and sand all mixed together under pressure. The FPSO separates these components. Gas is processed and either re-injected into the reservoir to maintain pressure, used as fuel for the vessel's own power systems, or exported via pipeline. Water is treated and either re-injected or discharged under strict environmental controls. Sand and solids are managed separately. What remains is crude oil, processed, measured, and stored in the cargo tanks, built into the FPSO's hull. A large FPSO can store between 1 and 2 million barrels of crude oil in its hull tanks. That storage capacity is what makes the FPSO system work in remote locations where no pipeline infrastructure exists. Now let me go deeper into the subsea systems, because this is where the engineering is least understood and most remarkable. The actual extraction happens on the ocean floor, not on the platform above. Subsea wellheads sit on the seabed, directly above the reservoir. These are not simple valves. A subsea wellhead is a pressure-containing assembly rated to withstand the full reservoir pressure, which can exceed 1,000 bar in some deepwater fields, while being submerged in near-freezing water at pressures of 300 bar or more from the ocean itself. The wellhead controls the flow of oil and gas from the reservoir using a system called a Christmas tree, an assembly of valves, pressure sensors, and flow control equipment that sits on top of the wellhead and manages production. In deep water, this entire assembly must be installed, operated, and maintained remotely, using remotely operated vehicles, ROVs, because no human diver can work at those depths. From the wellhead, oil travels through flexible risers, large diameter pipes that carry production fluid from the seabed up to the floating platform above. These risers are not rigid. They flex continuously as the FPSO moves with the ocean surface. They must withstand the full production pressure from below, the crushing external pressure of the deep ocean, the fatigue of constant flexing, and the corrosive effect of the seawater surrounding them. A single riser failure in a deep water field is a major incident. They are engineered with significant safety margins and inspected continuously. On the seabed itself, multiple wells may be connected by a network of pipes called a flowline system, all routing production to a central manifold before it rises to the FPSO. This entire subsea network, wellheads, flowlines, manifolds, risers, control umbilicals, is installed on the ocean floor without direct human presence. Every connection is made by ROVs operating under the supervision of engineers on the surface vessel above. One of the most significant engineering challenges in deepwater production is flow assurance. Crude oil contains wax, asphalt, and hydrates, compounds that can solidify or crystallize when oil temperature drops. In deep water, the seabed temperature is typically between 2 and 4 degrees Celsius. Oil produced from a reservoir at 80 to 120 degrees Celsius must travel several kilometers through cold seawater before reaching the platform. If flow is not maintained continuously, wax deposits can block the flow lines. Hydrates, ice-like crystals that form from gas and water at high pressure and low temperature, can plug a pipeline completely within hours of a shutdown. Managing this requires insulated pipes, chemical injection systems that dose methanol or glycol into the flow to prevent hydrate formation, and carefully planned shutdown and restart procedures. Flow assurance engineering is a discipline in itself, and failures have shut down entire deep water fields for months. Once oil is stored in the FPSO's hull tanks, it must be transferred to a tanker for transport to shore. This transfer, called ship-to-ship transfer or offloading, happens while both vessels are at sea, typically every 7 to 14 days depending on production rate and tanker capacity. The tanker approaches the FPSO from the stern, connects via a floating hose, and receives crude oil pumped from the FPSO's cargo tanks. This process transfers between 500,000 and 2 million barrels of oil, and it happens in open ocean, in whatever weather conditions exist at the time. The tanker receiving the oil is typically a very large crude carrier, a VLCC. These are among the largest vessels ever built. A fully loaded VLCC displaces up to 300,000 deadweight tons. It is 330 meters long. It carries up to 2 million barrels of crude oil in multiple cargo tanks separated by ballast spaces, a design that provides structural integrity and limits the consequences of any single tank failure. Inside the VLCC, the cargo is not simply a liquid sitting in a tank. Crude oil varies significantly in composition: viscosity, sulfur content, wax content, temperature requirements. Some crudes must be heated to remain pumpable. The VLCC's cargo system includes heating coils, inert gas systems to prevent explosive atmospheres above the cargo, high-capacity cargo pumps for loading and discharge, and sophisticated tank gauging systems that measure volumes, temperatures, and pressures across all cargo compartments simultaneously. The inert gas system is particularly important. Crude oil vapor mixed with air in the right concentration is explosive. To prevent this, cargo tanks are kept filled with inert gas, typically exhaust gas from the ship's boilers, processed to remove oxygen at all times. This gas displaces the oxygen that would otherwise accumulate in the vapor space above the cargo and eliminates the possibility of ignition. From the FPSO offloading point, the VLCC travels to its destination, a refinery terminal, typically weeks away. Supertankers do not dock at city ports. They offload at dedicated marine terminals, often offshore, where the crude is transferred via pipeline to shore-based storage and then to the refinery. At the refinery terminal, the process reverses. Large cargo pumps on the VLCC discharge the crude through a loading arm into the terminal pipeline. This discharge operation, for a fully loaded VLCC, takes between 24 and 36 hours. The crude oil then enters the refinery, where it is distilled, cracked, and processed into the petroleum products that reach the end user. So when you fill a tank at a gas station, the fuel you are putting in may have started its journey several years earlier when a seismic survey ship identified a promising structure deep beneath the ocean floor. It was confirmed by an exploratory well that cost more than a skyscraper. It was extracted by a subsea system on the ocean floor, operated entirely by remote vehicles. It was processed on a floating vessel the size of a small factory, moored in water deeper than most mountains are tall. It was transferred to a supertanker in the open ocean, carried across thousands of kilometers of sea, and discharged into a refinery terminal before it ever came near a road. Every stage of that journey involves engineering operating at the limit of what is currently possible. And most of it happens out of sight, in places most people will never see. If you want to understand the vessel that carries that oil across the ocean, how a 300,000-ton supertanker actually works, how it steers, how it manages its cargo, and what happens when something goes wrong at sea, I have covered that in another video.